In this video, I'm going to cover visualization in Leapfrog, including the functionality of the scene list and the properties panel. To start this tutorial, I'm going to open a simple project that contains drilling, a topographic surface, and a geological model. First, let's view the drill holes in the scene. You can either drag the top-level drill holes object, which will bring in all of the tables, or you can select which of the tables to view and drag them in individually. I'm going to start by dragging out the top level to view both my collar file as well as the drill holes themselves. When items are loaded into the scene view, you'll notice they also appear in the scene list below. The tools in the scene list and properties panel allow you to modify what you're displaying in the scene window. The first tool we can use in the scene list is the eyeball at the left-hand side. The eyeball controls whether or not an object is visible or invisible. The next icon over in the scene list represents what type of data you're viewing. You'll notice in the project tree that each individual type has its own symbol. A topography, for example, has a mountain symbol, whereas a map has a little map, and the geological model pieces all have its own symbol as well. This helps you keep track of what you're viewing when you have many items loaded into the scene. Next, we obviously have the name of that particular item. And then if we move over to the right-hand side, we have a number of tools which we can use to control the look of the object in the scene. Looking at the geology object, the first drop-down we have allows you to select what you're actually viewing down your drill hole trace. In this case, we have the option to display the drill holes as either a flat color, by the rock column of data, or by the weathering column of data that we imported for this particular table. The second option beside the drop-down allows you to edit the colors. You simply click Edit Colors, and the window opens and you are able to click on the color swatch to select any color you like. You also have the ability to enter an RGB value, select anything on the color wheel, or you can use the eyedropper to select the identical color from anywhere else in the scene. The Edit Colors window also gives you the ability to turn on the visibility of one or more specific unit. To turn off all of the units at once, you can click the eyeball at the very top and you will see none of the units. You can then turn units on one by one to view them. The next object in the scene list allows you to vary the transparency. So it's just a slider bar that you can bring back and forth. Beside the transparency slider, we have an option to toggle between the cylinders or the 2D lines. Working with the cylinders is graphically more intensive. So if you have many drill holes, we recommend that you use the 2D drill hole trace while modeling. Beside the option to make the drill holes cylinders, we have the ability to turn on or off the trace lines. While all of the colors are turned on for your drill hole units, you will not be able to see the difference between this being on or off. However, if you've selected Edit Colors so that you're viewing only a couple of your units, say for example my oxide and my mixed zone, right now I see the traces of the rest of my drill holes, but I have the option to toggle them off. The next option I have in the scene list is to label the individual units down the drill hole. So again, of course, the labels will change depending on what column of data I am viewing. Lastly, but certainly not least, we have the ability to show the legend in the scene. The legend follows whatever you happen to be displaying in the scene at that particular time. So if I turned off some of the units for my rock types, the legend will change accordingly. You'll notice that when I have this geology table highlighted in the scene list, that there's also an active properties panel for it. In the properties panel, I can change how a particular item is sliced, and we also have the ability to change the width or radius of the line. When you have a cylinder, you adjust the line radius. However, when you're viewing the data as 2D traces, here you have the ability to adjust the line width. All data types that can be viewed in the scene have a corresponding scene list and properties panel functionality. While many of the tools are the same for each of the different data types, there are some differences. Surfaces, for example, have different tools from the drill holes in the scene list. So I will just drag out one of the volumes from my geological model to use as an example. As you can see, the surfaces still have the invisible visible button. The little icon that represents a closed volume in Leapfrog is different from a table. Then of course we still have the name of the unit. We still have the transparency slider, but in the end we have three separate triangles that represent how we visualize that surface in our scene. Right now we have the Show Faces active, and as we can see, there are little triangles on the surface. The next option is to apply Smooth Faces. This applies a smoothing visual so that you no longer see the triangle faces. Lastly, we have the ability to show edges. We can show the edges with the faces so that we can see the size of the triangles making up the surface, or we can choose to view it without the faces so we just see the wireframe. Lastly, surfaces also have the ability to show the legend in the scene. In this case, we're going to see the legend for the entire geological model. There are also options in the Properties panel that pertain to the slicer. So I'm just going to draw a simple slice so we can take a look at those options. The first option that we have is that different items can be sliced differently from one another by using the slice mode. So for example, I can select to have my drill holes unsliced while my geological model is sliced. In addition to the slice mode, volumes also have the ability to fill slicer. Let's take a look at that without the distraction of the drill holes. For a particular unit, I have the ability to toggle on or off the fill slicer option. I can either select one at a time to do this, or if I'd like to apply the same rules to all of the volumes, I can simply double-click one of them and all like objects will be selected. I can then select to toggle the fill slicer on or off for all of these different volumes. This allows me to take a look at my drill holes and how they correspond to my geological model. The option that I have for these three triangles can also play a factor here. Right now, I still see a somewhat 3D representation or thickness on my slice. If I double-click all of the volumes and toggle off all of these triangles, I now see an exact 2D representation in the plane of the slice.